warm word of welcome from Madibaz Sport. My name is Rian Osman. Just do a very formal, brief introduction of our guest. He's an alumnus of the Nelson Mandela University, former Madibaz hockey captain. He's has a diploma in sport management and marketing that he obtained at the Nelson Mandela University. He represented South African men's hockey team, has 38 caps. He attended the Olympics in 2004 in Athens, and also the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne in 2006. He moved to Bath University in 2006. He accepted the post of head hockey coach at University of Bath. During that time, I'm sure we can safely say he's made the position his own. He's been there for 14 years. He's acquired his level 2 and level 3 UK coaching qualification. He's also obtained a postgrad diploma in elite coaching practice at the University of Central Lancashire. He's currently the interim head coach of Great Britain Elite Development Program for Ladies. And for many years, he's been overseeing the under 18 and under 21 Great Britain men's and England men's boys teams. Sorry, he's a son of the soil. He's from Port Elizabeth. He's alumnus of the university, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jody Paul.
Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to share some information with you guys. I know Rian has asked me to share a bit of we had a discussion. It's kind of like, what should we be sharing in the session? And I think the COVID situation has been a period for reflection and learning. So I've kind of looked at the way I deliver some stuff in my environment, and I thought we could use that as a basis for discussion. So please fire away any questions that you have as we go through the session. I'll flip through, so I'm not the best with these Zoom sessions. I'll flip through and share my screen and kind of get to a situation. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to show you. Okay, great. So in terms of the aspects we'll be covering in this very brief presentation, it would be individual development plans for players and also session planning. I think that came from a definition of talent I found and kind of discussed in COVID. I mean, in the COVID situation, we had loads of webinars and there's so much learning available. I tried to kind of pinpoint specifics that I really wanted to work on and develop. So in terms of talent, there's so many definitions, but I think this is the one that really stood out for me, is the person's natural ability, their potential. And if you can see this, I mean, all these, to say little things, individual motivation, persistence. But this is the bit that really stood out as well. It's the bit we can control as coaches and mentors, managers. It's the environment. So the big thing for us is talent will be the output if we can get the environment right and get their motivation sorted as well, which is kind of a simple thing when you see it on the screen. But in terms of the planning and thinking and design, it takes so much time and so much effort. And I've tried to simplify things as much as possible. But by simplifying things, you sometimes complicate things as well. So this is the basis of our discussion, is the environment, how we can control it, how we can set this up so that we get the level of output we think the athlete should get to, and the athlete wants to get to themselves as well. So, like I said, in COVID, there was so much going on and so many options to see and connect with people. We had conversations with Max Caldas, Alison Annan, Danny Carey, all these really good international coaches. And the one that actually stood out for me the most was this little presentation that Eddie Jones did. And we'll use this as a basis and keep coming back to it, because I think it just sums up everything I wanted to kind of nail in COVID in terms of becoming a better person, better coach at the end of it. So if you look at the screen, there's so many takeaways here. So the thing that stands out for me is, where are we going here? That's better about, yeah. If you want to keep coaching, you've got to keep improving. Understand you'll never become a good coach. You'll just trying to be a good coach. You're just trying to be a good coach. And that is massive for me. So if you look in this bit of here, connecting with players. I found that in my time as an under 18 coach, we spend a lot of time coaching individuals, giving them individual development plans, which I'll show you an example of. But it was more of a tick box exercise. So each player would have an individual development plan, kind of like specific technical skills they need to work on, things that we need to be conscious of in their environment. But when you've got 30 players in a group, you need four individual plans for each player. And it got to a stage where we just tick in a box. It was an Excel spreadsheet, and we go tick, 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 tick. And I think this bit here about connecting with players, knowing your players, made me think that COVID was a really good opportunity to really connect with the players. So we'd have Zoom meetings and kind of go, look, I've always said that COVID is an opportunity instead of a threat to a certain extent, because at the end of it, we'd have players who would really love playing hockey and understand that they need to push themselves, or we'd have players that go, actually, I didn't miss the game that much. And we could see the difference between the two. And we really went into detail with some of the stuff we did with them. So the individual development plan for each player, I changed it where instead of it being a, let's flip out of it. So this would be an example of the original development plan for players. If you guys can see that. There. So name of player, hockey specific, PCA, PCD, some physical stuff, some mental stuff. And each player did one of those. So as a coach, I'd have for I think we've got 25, 26 players in our GB EDP program. We'd go through every single one of them. I'd go through it. The assistant coach would go through it. We'd contact their club coach, university coach, and go through that kind of thing. And the thing that struck me the most was it says individual development plan, but each player had the same structure. So I kind of sat down with the girls, individuals in the girls. I kind of went with one of the younger ones, probably a 17, 18-year-old. And we've got 23, 24-year-olds in the same group as well. And said, how do we make this more specific for you as an individual? And I actually kind of had black faces because they're a product of their system. So they would have gone through this under 16s, under 18s, and tick box kind of thing. And I went, well, how do I know you and how do you know me? So that we could start with each other when we're on the pitch and we're not on the pitch as well. This program is set up so that I go backwards again. So the GB EDP's Elite Development Program is the layer just below the senior international. So our responsibility is to bridge the gap from under 18s to the seniors. If there was a massive gap in place, come out of under 18s going into 21, and then that jump to the seniors was just too big for them to handle. So the EDP is created to kind of bridge that gap so they get senior opportunities. We develop them as individuals and put them in the best possible position to be that senior international. So when I saw this kind of thing, I was like, well, one size doesn't fit all. So we played around with it a bit, and we've got psych support, which we're lucky to have, and loads of experienced coaches as well. And we just want each player was allowed to do whatever they wanted, as long as it made sense to them. They could refer back to it. And every time I looked at it or they looked at it, there was specific information on this individual development plan, which was specific, and that's specific to them, but it made sense and there was purpose. It didn't just kind of fill in a document and it gets stuck on your desktop somewhere or on a piece of paper somewhere in your office. And the girls reacted really well to it. It was really interesting because some of them just said, this is what I like. I like it specific. I want this plan. I said, that's fine. And they actually struggled with that. They were kind of like, well, I thought you wanted special. And I said, I don't want anything special. I want it specific to you, and it's got to have purpose. And whenever I do stuff, whether it's session planning or this kind of thing, there has to be a purpose behind it. And these are the kind of things that came up. So this is an old version of Nicole. I've asked her, she's happy for me to share. And if you can see that as well. So Nicole Marks, one of our goalkeepers, really interesting character as well. She works full time. She was starting to become a lawyer, and this was her IDP. Really good. She's one of the kids. I say kids, but one of the players who will actually put a lot of effort and thought process, and she likes planning. And we went through it, and she kind of looked at it and went, "It's good, but doesn't really make that much sense." Like if you had to have a one page of what a future holds. She then, if I can flip out of it, she came up with this. So I looked at it, and for me, everything on this page makes complete sense. One page, and she was really good at it. She put a timeline in it, selection periods, she got a law exams in it, uni course deadlines, everything, which is really important. So we spoke about this external support she needs. She wants feedback in video clips. She wants training sessions with the seniors. She wants to continue one-to-one with a name you know, actually, Chris Ebert, one of the PE's finest. All of this. But I see that, and I can help her. And I see that, and it makes sense to me. Burnout, fatigue. She does a lot of traveling because she doesn't. I think a local club is 2 hours away, so she makes the effort to play because she wants to play in the Premier League. So she's got to adjust the work daily schedule. Train first thing in the morning. She trains, I think it's like 5 or something before she goes to work. So everything's on display, document, which is so important because I now have a better understanding of Nicole and how best we can help her. And the most important thing is we help Nicole, but Nicole can help herself as well. Another example here would be Vicky McCabe. So that's her development plans, and it just makes so much sense. And we've made a special effort as well to make sure these players understand their strengths and super strengths. So they can emphasize on that. We always, initially, it would be kind of like what a player is good at and how do we improve those weaknesses. So we're trying to shift that and put emphasis more on, obviously, make them better in terms of their weakness, but what are their super strengths? So Vicky is one of the players, she's really quick. She's quick. So we emphasize that and we make it sure she actually uses that in terms of speed and the pressing and the winning mentality. The other thing, and I'll go back to, because of our psych support, we were able to discuss mental triggers. And I found this really interesting. And even discussing this with the players as well. I think when, I've never done it as an exercise before, and I think I would have struggled when I was playing. I still probably struggle as a coach as well. And I'll show you the work we did with them, but I thought it was really interesting. You see these kind of things, triggers on a bad day, what affects her when she's on the pitch not getting the ball, and how she feels about that. And I thought that was massive for me as a coach. With that information, I can now connect better with Vicky because I have a better understanding of when she's having a good day, when she's having a bad day. She's got the solutions in here as well. And that, like I think in COVID, that was one of the things that stood out for me as well, is we always see these players and we kind of, get on with it. We talk about players who are one step away from seeing international hockey, and you kind of go, they have the belief, we know they're young, they've got the technical ability, and they all want to do it. But some of them will just have really bad days, and we don't have to go through the whole process. Oh, is Vicky on a bad day? What is Vicky like on a bad day? We don't have like a list of every single player when they come down to the pitch and what does Vicky look like on a bad day? What does Nicole look like on a bad day? Is she having a good day? Is she having a bad day? She might just have a set. So I think the thing for us as coaches is not to overthink it, but I think the thing for us is to have this kind of information is really important. I would have bypassed all of this and focused more on the actual planning of the session, the technical detail. What is Vicky should be working on? She's really quick, so she needs to carry the ball in a certain position where she can use the strength and pace to eliminate players. But this, how the players are feeling before, during, and after the session has a massive impact on their retention of knowledge and their learning. So this is one example. I think Vicky's example of the IDP gave me a really good understanding. I mean, Vicky as a person, and I did check with her, she doesn't mind me discussing this kind of thing, is she's really positive and bouncy. She's one of those people who's always talking and all that. And I found this really interesting. She said, my biggest fear is being overlooked. And those kind of things just give you an insight. And if you go back to that Eddie Jones connecting with your players, I think the bit just before a session, that connection with players is something before COVID I massively overlooked, and the impact, a throwaway comment I could make as a walking past a player, saying something, that impact it would have on a player in the session, and connecting with players in sessions, post sessions, before sessions, WhatsApp messages, those kind of things lead to everything, making the session and the person really enjoy it and learn something from it. Another example before I move on, triggers, get that. So we did a workshop with the players on these triggers. It looks really complicated, but it's so simple. What does it look like on a good day? What does it look like on a bad day? I'm not just flip through it, we can discuss it afterwards. And then again, another one that stood out for me was this play over here, which I found really interesting. See if you can, I don't know if you can see that. So one of the triggers would be unfairness, when someone works harder than another person, but isn't rewarded and recognized for it. I thought that is probably one of the most interesting ones, which I would never have thought about with this play in mind. I mean, we all know I suppose Gian's one of those dodgy umpires, miss things in training sessions. We can always forgive umpires kind of for that kind of thing. But this, for me, was a big learn with this particular player. I wouldn't say I now treat it differently. I'm just more aware of why she behaves in a certain way. Like she feels like she needs to be rewarded. I wouldn't say constantly. Because at first, when I first read it, I was kind of like, oh, that's a bit much. But it's just little nuggets of information. I can now see why. And I had a big chat with her about it. I said, so why don't you, as a person, go out and speak to these players? If you think they're not trying hard enough. She said, oh, I can't do that. And I said, I find that really interesting, because me as a player, I was that player. Like I could go and say to someone, that's not good enough. You don't do it at all. And I was quite hard on younger players when I was coming through. And I'm sure some of them, they probably wouldn't recognize me now. I'm much nicer, I think. But before, when we were playing, there were standards, and you adhere to the standards, whether you were first year or final year, it didn't make a difference. We had principles and standards, and we always maintained that. And I was kind of the enforcer of those standards. But she doesn't have the capability to actually turn around to that play and say that's not good enough. And we discussed it, and we said how it affected her performances. And she's slowly starting to kind of call people out if she thinks they're not doing good enough. And it's really good for her development as a person and as a player. So yeah, these kind of things are the basis of our program. And I just think if I think back to when I was playing, we didn't go through all this in detail. It was all about going on the pitch, technical session, tactical session, and playing. Whether this is another layer is good or bad is debatable. I just think we now have more information that we can use to make these players better. And us as coaches, it is to kind of sift through all that information and make the most of it and use what we really need to use and not overkill at the same time. If we go back to this as well, I keep coming back to this. I found this slide and I thought it was really interesting. There's so much information on here. If you now go into the actual session planning, I probably go into too much detail at some situations, and I wouldn't say overkill, but it's more kind of a piece for me that I know that I've prepared the best I possibly can. And it goes back to this, the role of the coach to create situation structures for leadership, to give structure to a session and framework for players to go within. These three things really stand out for me as well in terms of session planning. So I would go overkill on my session planning. I wouldn't share all of it with the players, but I'd really go overkill. And I've shifted my session planning from timings, what we're covering, into also kind of co-coaching. And I'll show you examples now as well. It's kind of where you stop sharing for a second, just for a second. I keep seeing this thing in front. I think the big thing is also having the purpose. understanding what we want out of the session and having a structure. So we speak a lot about co-coaching these days, and that comes into kind of, so I've got 2 assistant coaches when I'm doing the EDP stuff. It'll be, so what are you covering? What are you looking for? What am I covering? Where are we positioned? Are you talking, which players are you talking to? Which players am I talking to? When do we jump in? When do we not jump in? And all of that detail is really important. Now you can have all that detail, and sometimes it just actually goes out the window because you've seen something. So I think all our coaches have license to jump in when they feel they need to, but our big emphasis is on actually standing back and allowing players to get on with it. So what I'll show you now is we potentially, fingers crossed, we might be playing Germany in a couple of games in November. If we can get through all the protocols, that's kind of something for the players to look forward to. And just before COVID hit properly in the UK, we were one of the last groups to actually have a camp, and we played Wales. So what I'm going to show you now is our planning going into that camp. And I'm actually going to use that as a basis to plan for the Germany games in November. So kind of, I like the whole kind of plan, do, review. So that was my first proper camp planning for games. We'll use that as a basis. Our staff will go through the review of like what worked, what didn't work, and then use that to go forward. So I'll share my screen again. Okay, so this is actually before the camp. These are the kind of things I just like, we just need to be conscious of constantly, and we're always overthinking things. So that's me looking after outlet PCA, Hannah's looking after pressing, John's looking after pressing as well. We had the Scottish senior coach, head coach coming on a Sunday. So we need to be conscious of the players being aware that Scottish coach was around. We had loads of guest coaches coming in to help out. So we had a few senior internationals coming to run a session. We had 418 girls who are normally part of our environment. They were coming for a day as well. And then like these kind of things are normal camp schedule change. So this is our planning before the actual briefing. So more planning, as you can see. The big thing message here is I talk about expression points and pressure points. So when I see training as pressure points, you work hard, you train hard, and you really put players, depending on the session and what you want from the outcome, you put them on edge as much as possible and you push them. I feel our games, our matches should be our expression points, where we've prepared them to a certain level where they go out and actually enjoy it. I remember some of the games I played in, especially those January camps when we used to go to Poch or Pretoria when we were getting hammered. And I hated those games. I remember going to international matches really tired and fatigued. And there was obviously a reason for it. There's kind of planning and all that. I didn't enjoy as many of the games as I should have enjoyed. So I think I take that back into my coaching these days and kind of think about expression points where training is hard. We're conscious of our language, the way we get the message across that these games are expression points and you shouldn't feel the pressure. I mean, it's obviously international games, but you shouldn't feel the pressure. And that's why I generally feel that if we prepare, say properly, with as much information as possible, these players can go in there and just play. And for me, that's one of my learnings as well. Discovery is looking at how I do pre-match talks, halftime talks, quarter-time talks, post-match reviews as well, because I never listened in team talks. It's one of my things. I remember international matches. I never really listened because we played man-to-man system. I played at the back, and my job was to make sure he didn't receive the ball. And when I got it, I passed the ball to him. So I didn't really need to know. And that was whether that's right or wrong is debatable. I just think we need a different kind of player these days who understands the game, who can make decisions. I didn't want to be that player when I played. I just wanted to do my job. What is my job? And I can get on with it. And the game's changed so much. We have players playing in different lines, leading through. It's much more dynamic, and you've got to have a better understanding of the game. So in training sessions, we go through everything so that they are clear they understand it, they understand the purpose, they can relax and express themselves. So that's a briefing staff would get. In terms of actual nitty-gritty or hockey detail, these are technical focus points. So when we're talking about defending in the sessions, so I would probably cover the 1v1 defending. So my question interventions would be based on these specifically. It wouldn't just be reacting to whatever I've seen on the pitch. I've got to base my questioning on these over here, because these are principles and these are the technical details we need to nail in sessions. Applying forward pressure, these are the things we nail. So the type of question might change, but fundamentally these are the points we need to hit in the sessions. So that's what I said earlier about the planning would have gone from the timing, how many balls, who was doing what, when they were doing it, who had the bibs, who didn't have bibs, that kind of thing, who was umpiring. This underpins all of that. So in terms of specifics, questions, small unit play, more purpose behind it. And then I talk a lot about feed forward. Again, it comes back from me as a player. I used to hate the feedback when you couldn't do anything about it. So especially like the selection thing, I suppose it's just sour grapes from me as a player, was you'd get this feedback post IPT or a tournament, kind of like, you didn't make it because of this. And the more and more I went through my coaching, I kind of thought, so what if I know there's a reason Molly can't make the team? Like she doesn't do this specific thing. She doesn't need the ball over distance, or she's not really good in a 1v1 defending, or whatever it is. Why don't we tell the players beforehand so they can actually do something about it? I think the feedback post-tournament, if a coach, if he knew there was an issue, is selfish. So it's a cheat, and it's a way out of kind of making things easy for yourself as a coach. So I work on feed forward, kind of like, so these players will receive this information before camps, going into games, to give them a bit of an understanding of these are the things we want you to concentrate on. And to be fair, it should be kind of probably 2 focus points, shouldn't be as many as 3 or 4. But the message to them is, these are the things we expect you to do. When you get the video after, you can have a look at it, you can be more focused, you can understand what we expect from you. I think sometimes as coaches, we make the mistake of assuming that they know. We wouldn't know that they know by having these discussions with them. So that comes again, leads back to the IDPs, this kind of information. And generally speaking, the players seem to want to have this information, and they try and use the information as well. I think an example, Jenny Edie. So we did a session before this camp, and she was in a position where she's demanding the ball. Her actual positioning on the pitch was really good, but she didn't give me that confidence that if I was playing at fullback, that she'd want the ball. So we put an emphasis on demanding the ball in there with your body positioning, and the tone is give me the ball. And she actually did really well. So I think we've got to be careful that it's not a lot of overkill with information, but it's also, in terms of the program we're running, it is developing individuals, and they need to know this beforehand. It's my take on it anyway. I'm conscious I'm chatting through things here. So if we, again, I'll come back to this Eddie Jones one. Yeah, it's the role of the coach to give opportunities for the players to do what they would. So this is a big thing. And then getting the players involved, also giving the players 100% autonomy, less coach driven. Now, I think it depends on the group and the level they're at. I think if you did that with a really young group and it was consistent throughout, let's say you did it from under 16 level, and that was the way we coach from under 16s, under 18s, under 21s, I think that would make complete sense, because it's a pathway. It doesn't always happen that way. So the problem we have sometimes is we go, oh no, it's player led. It's the players have ownership, and they'll do this and they'll do that. Sometimes the players don't know because they don't have that grounding, they don't have that background. So we've got to look at what kind of group we have and how much we can give them. I think there's a while back, and again, and shoot me down if you want. There was a while back where everything was athlete-centered and the athletes did this and you could get on with it. And it was the whole thing about the coach making themselves redundant, which is fine if the players actually have the tools. I think it's the flip side where if you left them to their own devices, you're actually doing them a disservice and you're not helping them. We had a really good example probably 2 years ago now. England under 18 boys were playing Ireland under 18 boys. And for some of the boys, it was their first camp, their first exposure. And we had coach developers who were involved, and they were kind of like, it'd be a really good idea if you didn't speak to the players during the game. I was kind of thinking that's a really bad idea. If it was at the end of the cycle and we'd been with those players for, say, 8 to 10 months, I think the timing would have been better. But for some of these boys, it was their first exposure into junior international hockey. And it was a really good idea. Let's leave them to their own devices. They'll learn, they'll make decisions, they'll make the best of it, and we can see the leaders come through who will talk, blah, blah, blah. And I went with it because it was kind of a thing all the coaches had to do. And we lost the game. I think it was 5-1 or something. It wasn't an actual loss because Ireland were a good squad. It was the way we lost. I think we left those players out to dry because they didn't have the necessary tactical understanding to make changes. They didn't have the understanding to communicate with players. They didn't know each other, and we kind of did this thing as this marketing tool because this would be really cool. And I always think back to that. You have to have a fundamental understanding of your player group, what they know, what it for them, and we will learn whether it's mistakes, but you need to give them the structure and opportunity. So I kind of do it by doing little bits. So the player group I have now, they understand the game better. I mean, they are one step away from the seniors. You'd like to think so. So a small task we gave them was the penalty corner attack. So they had to come up with, we put a load, we use the Untitled platform, and there are loads of games, international games, senior stuff, our stuff on there. And we clipped, I think it must have been about 25 corners or something, I can't remember. As you can see, it's really specific, 3 minutes, 11 seconds worth of footage. And they had to come back with 4 variations. We got the goalkeepers involved as well, because I always work with goalkeepers and kind of say, okay, what's difficult? Like if I call a certain corner, what is really difficult to defend? And I don't think we're getting our goalkeepers involved. If you think back to sessions, they're always sitting in the goal somewhere and the outfield players are talking. I try to get them involved as much as possible because they give you another perspective. They give you input. It's quite funny. I asked our goalkeepers the other day. One of our players did a 1v1 and she saved it. And I stopped the session. I said, okay, Mum, can you help Sally actually eliminate you and score the next time? And she had a complete meltdown. She kind of looked at me and, what do you mean? I'm not helping her. And I said, no, I get that. She's kind of like, well, my job is to keep the ball out of the net. Why should I help Sally? So I said, yeah, because she's a teammate. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm not. She said, I'm not trying to be difficult, but that was the thing. It was really funny. We actually had a 5-minute discussion about how impactful goalkeepers are, defenders are, on helping forwards understand how to score goals, how to find space. You just balance one of the other. If we can create really good defenders, we'll create really good attackers because they need to be really good. Anyway, I'll go off on one as well. Anyway, so the girls came up with this, and we had to be really specific with them. So there you go, routines. And again, I'll always come back to why. They can't just come up with random, these are the corners, you know, why. So if we think the Welsh should have a gap on the near post, far post, whatever it is, these are the things we want specific information. And then we name the goals as well. So it's a small, I wouldn't say test, it was a task and kind of see if they could communicate, if they could come up, if their tactical understanding of corners was up to speed, and the ability to communicate that as well. So they owned the corners for that camp. And the brilliant thing is we played Wales on Sunday. Yes, Sunday. And we actually scored one of these variations. So the first one came over. I said, I'm not calling any corners. You guys go in. And they called the first corner and they scored. And I think that moment is quite priceless as well. Look, we could have missed. It could have gone the other way. But I think for them to have gone through the process, chosen those corners, gone, okay, we'll go with this one. They changed the call. scored was brilliant. So they came off the pitch on a high, and that's a little bit of ownership for them as well. Last bit, I'm rattling on here. So the actual sessions themselves, let's go. So this is the detail we put on the session themselves. So we go Sunday, Monday. So if you see this, I've got different types of sessions. So green will be a technical session, which means there's not much, I'd say not much running in it, because we're conscious of the game in the afternoon. It wasn't as high intense, so we weren't doing as many sprints, that kind of thing. So it was more consistent with shorter times and us moving them in groups. SP stands for our manager. She's actually moved on now, but she's there to keep the mood up. And these are the kind of things. So it's all specific. So they would get this kind of information before the camp. So I try to get this information out to the girls 2 days before. Staff gets the information 4 days before, and the girls get the information 2 days before, so they can read through it. So that would be great physical intensity. So it's a little bit of getting the legs going in the afternoon. Warm-ups, who's running the warm-ups. More specific stuff here as well. We did a summer session at a camp in Loughborough in December. So we used a little bit of video to prime the girls so that they understand it and go through it and get a visual on what we were doing. PCA, PCD. Yeah. And then also conscious of the mood. So if we go back to the actual, back out of that. If we go back to the planning of the camp, that camp coincided with the league coming to an end. And I think it was the last Saturday of league, and we had girls in teams who could either, it was really odd year, they could either get into the top 4 for playoffs, or they could have been relegated. So we were conscious that we would have players pitching up on the Sunday in a good mood, having survived, or they could have been really miserable because they just got relegated. So we had 2 kind of morning sessions planned depending on what the mood was like. And it was really interesting because we went with the first one, and within half an hour, I changed it because people just I think the emotional and physical effort of trying to survive the day before the league season, all that had an impact on it. So we had to change the session, turn it into a fun kind of 66 EDP Cup. You stayed on, the first team get 6 goals, would win it, and the mood lifted. I think there's loads of planning you can go through, and the detail is really important as a coach. As a coach, you need to nail the detail, but there's also a feel for things. If you walk on that pitch and you feel this is just not working, you should be up as a coach. If it's not working, we'll change it. And I think the players will respect you more. I always kind of used to think, oof, if I change things now, players might think I don't know what I'm doing. I suppose as you get older, you get wiser, you kind of go, I think this is the best thing. And those, it comes from years of experience and gut feel as well. So you don't feel it's working, change it. But understand why you're changing it and kind of communicate that to the players as well. Last example for us was with all the COVID situation was last night. Session plan as usual, bang, send out to the players. This was happening. This is when we're doing this, how we're doing it. And then I got a call probably an hour later saying, oh, 5 of the players might have to go into isolation. So plans changed, especially where we are at the moment. So I suppose, like I said, my final message is that the detail is important for us as coaches, but connecting with your players, understanding the feel of a session, understanding the feel of what you're doing is even more important. Have the courage and conviction to change things if you need to do that. And I think that's it from me. Shabazz.
Thank you, Jody. There's just one question that was sent through. What is PCA and PCD?
Go again, can you hear that?
What is PCA and PCD?
Penalty corner attack, penalty corner defense.
Thank you. Then, before I hand over to Ches, then just from From my side, I saw you spoke about the awareness and integration session for your younger players. How often do your under 18 and under 21 players actually integrate and play with senior opposition?
That's something we're looking to change at the moment. In the past, we speak to the under 18 coach, and they'd highlight 5, 6 players to say these are the next ones coming through, and they would come in for a camp. We'd go probably 2 or 3 of them at a time so they could feel comfortable, come in, get a feel for things, and then they'd go back out. I think we need to change that this year, or if we can, there's constant contact. So they might have to miss an under 18 camp, but we don't know how good they are, and it takes a while for them to be comfortable. So they come in for 1 camp and they leave. We then see them the following year. I don't think that's good enough. I think it takes at least 2 camps for these kids to feel like they're part of something and they're comfortable. And that's when we see them at their best. So there's no point coming in just for a camp, you disappear. We see them. So in this phase we are now, we've seen quite a few of them. So we're trying sessions every Wednesday. So I've invited them along so we can actually get to know them. They feel comfortable, they can play. I think the younger ones coming through are actually slightly better than the older ones. So when we go into this next cycle, that's going to be one of my kind of projects, so that the flow between 18s and 21s EDP is much more informed and smoother. There has to be a constant flow. I think it's good for the under 18s, and I think it's good for the older ones as well, because it keeps them on edge.
Thank you. There's no other questions in the panel or in the tab. So, Jason, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Nice background, Jason.
Thanks, Jodes, man. Took us a while to get that background going. Jody, you spoke a lot about being player focused within the current setup. So when do you guys focus on the team plan, or what is going to happen within, at training sessions?
You see, that's another balance. So just before I went into the EDP, I did the under 18 boys for I think 5 years, and I got really uncomfortable with the whole individual. It was really individual focus, and then all of a sudden you're playing games, and they're all the same in South Africa. You got to play for the badge. They're not playing for the badge. They're not playing. Well, whose fault is that? They're not doing it because we keep talking about them. So you need to get to under 21s. This is what you are going to do. And for a year, we changed the focus on us. It became us. So if I'm good, you'll be good. And I should be happy that 5 of us are going up. And for a year, the under 18s were really, I thought we had a really good bunch. We were, I think, results and performance based. So we went through series where we beat Germany, we beat Holland. That never happened before. We used to get hammered all the time. But in terms of the actual performances, we were really good. It wasn't kind of a 1-0 kind of thing. We outplayed them, but it was a collective, and that's the power of like you're saying, this power of us. Mm-hmm. And I think as coaches, we've got to be really conscious. So the EDP is slightly different, and I struggle with it because it's back to the old, I need to get this player into that crew, and it's about me. So we'll play Germany, and we'll go, well, we're not playing as a team. Whose fault is that? It's not the player's fault. It's our fault. So we've got to be really careful. And it would have been really interesting if we had the summer. We had games lined up against Germany, Belgium. We were going to the USA, and we were definitely moving towards the us and then the individual in that. And because we didn't have that opportunity in games, we couldn't. I believe in the us first, definitely.
Okay, it's good to hear that's the way you guys are doing it. And I agree with you when you spoke about COVID being an opportunity, to get to know your players a little bit better. In fact, in South Africa, we're very man-to-man orientated. I know I had a chat to you about zonal pressing, for instance, and I started introducing that to my team during COVID, or the squad that I had. And we also try to get the players to run a little session, as defensive group, your positional play, etc. So how do you get the players, one, to buy in, but 2, to also give feedback? Because I find that South African players struggle to put it into words, or or put a diagram to it, for instance?
Oh, we've got the opposite here. They've got far too much information. They know far too much. I shouldn't say that. I find, especially moving over to the women's game, and I think it's the way they've been coached as well. I think there's too much emphasis on that kind of information. It's almost information overload. Mm-hmm. So then you kind of stand there and you go, okay, so how is that important? It's good information, but information we give them has to be kind of on point. This is this, because otherwise you just overload the brain. You can't think. So in terms of me, zonal as well, I'm in the same position. We were man-to-man, full on for the past, I don't know how many years with the boys. And when I moved to the girls 3 years ago now, it's more zonal stuff, definitely more zonal. And kind of, I'm now educating myself. But at the same time, you use the players. I'll ask questions all the time. But I did this big presentation, and we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. I made video, all of that. And they kind of did it. And then I just went, okay, just leave it. Just leave it. Let's go man to man forward. Let's just go safe. And interesting, and this is why it just depends on your player group. It's kind of like we then went one of the games. I spoke to the coaches and I said, oh, let's just go for it. And she was like, well, what do you mean? So I said, let them do it. Let's go for it. And we didn't do any video. I said, it's fine. Let's go for it. And we told them just before the game, and they did it. And I think it was really interesting how, like, when you do the whole thing, presentations and the players do this, and that's, I think the key for us is to learn. I think it's like most things in life. They always say things. They think we want to hear, but they don't actually understand what they're saying. So you ask a question and it'll go up ball speed, transfer. All the standard. And you're like, yeah. I'll give say, tell me something I don't know. Tell me something else. And it takes a while for them to get used to it because they don't know if you're being sarcastic. They don't know, like, if you really mean it. It's something I really need to work on. Even Tracy, my wife, she's kind of like, I don't know when you're being sarcastic. And I've been with you like 25 years or something. How are they supposed to know when you're being genuine? So for me, it's one of those things I have to constantly, like, I'm really conscious of what I say to them, when I say it, how I say it. And that's the thing, you'll know as a head coach, you are always in the spotlight. I think assistant coach is the best position. You kind of, because everybody's friend, you're kind of in the background, you can help, and then you can step aside. As a head coach, people always look, whether it's winning, losing, good session, bad session, will always look at you and go, okay, what could we have better? So in terms of the zonal stuff, I think it's a really good way to develop players because they have to think. They generally have to kind of think, they be aware of space. How much space am I allowing here? Where my position? They need to take in communication. They need to give communication. Where the man-to-man it's obviously a good system, but if you're developing people and players, I would introduce zonal stuff more in the pathway because the wins are just communication, understanding, and you can just see you have to be aware of what is going on around you. Man-to-man, you just follow your players. It's not that difficult.
Thanks for that. Jodes, something I see you guys also implementing is the gap between under 21 and then a full international team player. South Africa, we've also caught onto that now. And we've introduced the SAA side, but that's a big mix of under 18s, the top under 21 players currently, and every now and then we chuck in an old player or two just to give some advice and help the players along. And how has that influenced England and Great Britain hockey in terms of that in-between group?
So when I do 20 under 21 men, I did 2013, 14. We did Junior World Cup, and it was a really good program. And then they worked out, obviously, with the girls winning gold in trio. There's a bit of funding coming as well. And it's such a massive gap. Like, we talk about the gap from under 18s to 21s being massive. So the gap from the under 21s to seniors. So this similar to an SAA, like when we played in those sides years ago. But the support around those players is massive. So like I said, we've got camps, they've got psych support, they've got nutritional support, S&C programs, they've got everything because it's the whole thing like what it takes to win. And they've got to bridge the gap. They don't bridge the gap. The seniors, and at the moment, because we're kind of disconnecting from the seniors because of all the COVID protocols and everything going on, like, I mean, you can't even get close to the senior program at the moment. So the seniors are kind of drifting away from us. We're trying to bring it close together, because there was this thing, I remember one of the senior men said it took him 50 test matches to actually think it was a senior international. Now, you don't have 50 test matches. You need to speed up the process. I think for us as coaches, I was chatting to Mark, and it's getting better. There was a disconnect between the senior coach and us. Like, now I can pick up the phone to Mark and say, with Mark Hager's the senior coach, say, look, we've got these 4 players. We need to stretch them. And that's what in that program is the individual stretch and the collective stretch. So we've got 3 players who are just above this, who are playing at the top of their game. How do we stretch them and develop them? They've got to go into the seniors. Okay. So if it wasn't for COVID, it would be more smoother. But there's all sorts of protocols now. We've got, I mean, saying to Shabazz earlier, we've got girls now going to senior program for 2 weeks. They've got to self-isolate. They're putting them up at Bisham Abbey. They've got to stay in their rooms. Thankfully, all the lectures are online, so they're not missing stuff. But all of that for hockey, yeah. But at the end of it, there's potential for them to play against Holland in the Pro League. Okay. So we've got to speed them up. The DPs there to speed up the process, speed up the transition.
Okay. Jodes, I've got a question here from Henny de Klerk. Stress tolerance, individually and in teams. Please give some practical advice how one should approach stress tolerance, improvement, and individuals and in teams.
So my take on that would be, well, it depends on your group. I think that's like saying, like the transition, you've got to push the buttons when you feel you need to push the buttons. And I think I spoke to some of the senior players when I first came in. I think there are 4 senior players. 2 of them were just transitioned from the EDP to the seniors, and 2 had been in the senior program for longer. And I sat down with them and COVID again, Zoom call, and I said, what make it easier for the players? And they came up similar to what Andy's saying about stress is they need to put on edge more. And I said, well, we can do that. I'm not saying that's easy, but that's the easy part of coaching is like push, push, push. And they were saying, but it depends on the language we're using. And I said, okay, so do the players need to know when we're pushing them over the edge? And I said, yeah, tell us. This is going to be a session that we are doing, and this is why we're doing it. In terms of tactics as well, I think it depends on your group. I think if the communication between player and coach, I mean, or the whole group is open, I massively believe we have to talk to each other. You can't kind of like, oh, what we're doing the session and then not tell them why. So if we're saying we're playing Wales or we're playing Germany in November, we're playing 3 at the back. We've never played 3 at the back. Tell them before, and this is what, you know, and especially in the girls' game, the stress levels, you can just see the brains kind of going all over the place. One of the things I did was we played a club team just before we played Wales, and if you worked with Paul Revington, you would know he's constantly barking out orders on the side of the pitch. I mean, constantly. It's this loud, booming voice. So I took over from Revs, and I was saying to the girls, I'm not going to shout at you. I'm not even going to talk to you at quarter time. I might talk to you at half time. Because I was kind of coming in to see, and some of them they did not react well to that. So in reflection, would I have done it again? Probably. I was on purpose kind of pushing the button saying, I cannot be standing on the side of the field shouting out instructions constantly. That is not helping you. You think it's helping you in the moment. So that, I suppose, I think it's answering Amy's question, is kind of being aware of the group, what would push the buttons. I use Revs as something as an opposite. It's kind of like, I'm not him, I can't be him. I'm going to push the buttons because he's used to it and go, this is going to be stressful. And again, I spoke to my assistant coach and said, you pick up the pieces. If there are any issues here, you need the comfort blanket. So we planned it. It wasn't just a case of kind of like, oh, we'll leave them to their own devices. She was kind of in the background fielding any questions because we didn't want them to go out there. And like I said, with the England situation where the boys got destroyed and he didn't have that support, we had my assistant coach as like if they genuinely needed help, she was there to kind of add that. The stress thing is really interesting. I think it takes a while to get used to. If you come in from day one, I don't know. It depends. It could be really detrimental or it could be really good for the group as well, because that might be a starting block. Yep. But as a coach, you've got to decide, I think this will be good for us and we'll go with it. If you've done your homework, I think this will work. And again, if it doesn't work, you can always learn from it and flip it and do it another way. You're always learning.
Jody, there's another question from Minnie, but before that, one of the guys said, nice presentation, Jody. That's Jose Cops. Now, before I ask you well, read out Denny's question, you've changed your coaching style. Can you hear me now?
Go back. Yeah, go back again. Yeah, go on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've changed your coaching style because you were a semi-revs at one stage, and that was probably before you left for England. But for the UPE team, I can remember them after winning a game, and you weren't happy with them running doggies or some sprint repeats or things like that. So how have you changed your coaching style, and what has brought that about? Is it your kids that has made you softer as a coach now, or is it your wife? The constant beating, Tracy, you know. So what has brought that change about?
Self-awareness, definitely understanding what is going on. My kids, massive. I'm sure I said this in some webinars. Like I did sessions, and I was kind of thinking, would I want my kids going through that? Would I want my kids to be coached by me? And the answer was no. And that was a massive. That was big for me. I'll never forget that moment. You're kind of like, no, this is not happening. And then to follow that up, I think that's important. But because I think everybody will have realization that I need to do this, or I'm doing this well, whatever it is. But then it's the follow up to that. And the university has been really good. I mean, whatever you want. CPD wise, I'm on this Leaders Institute. You can access everything. They send me on courses. But as a person, you've got to identify this is it. And I think back to the UP days, they weren't all bad. But like I said earlier, I just felt, because that's the way I wanted to learn. And that's where I did things. So I put that on other people. People are different. Would I do it again? Probably. That group of players, because I think we were successful because of the way I was. I don't know if we would have been successful, but I come back to the kids we are coaching today, the athletes we're coaching today, the people we're coaching today are completely different. They want success now. I wouldn't say they don't understand the world's changed. So as coaches, we have to change and adapt, because I used to be, I'm not doing that. They will learn. They will do it this way. And you're fighting a losing battle. So you have to adapt to what's going on. And it's difficult. I think I've changed my approach, but in terms of standards and values, I haven't changed that. I just package things differently.
Okay. That's some good advice. I would say kids definitely changes you. I'm also a softer coach these days, Joe. You won't believe that, but I don't shout as much anymore. Lots of people will differ with that. No, but you are right. It's a different environment and I think it's yours, man. It's a different environment.
I think it is mine.
It's a different player group and environment and upbringing that we're dealing with kids these days. But a change is needed. And for the coaches that's on this webinar, we need to adapt and constantly evolve as coaches. Like you said, don't change your values and what you believe in, but you need to change your style. Henny wants to know, he sees some books there behind you. I'm sure it's all your son's books, but any recommendations or good reads related to improvement of confidence?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I might actually have one. I got it, yeah. See that one?
The Champion's Mind.
That's a good one. There are loads of them. I'm old school, and I like the book. There's too many things on Kindle and all sorts. I like books. I did a load of reading in COVID as well. I think it's good for my kids to see I'm reading. And I've always, so it's my oldest loves reading as well. There's so many things. The challenge for me is I'll read a book, but to take that information and use it, that's a challenge. And I think that in COVID as well, like when you were on all these webinars, at the end of it, I would say stop. It was probably 2 months and I stopped going on them. It's kind of like, what is the learn? what am I learning? It's like that Eddie Jones thing. There's just loads of information gets chucked at you. And again, we're in a privileged position over here with CPD, GBRK. There's always something going on. I got an email earlier about one of the guys went into Chelsea and their academy and what they're doing in the language, and he kind of just sent it over. So there's always something, but it's what do we do with that information and how we can make it impactful, which is really important. There'll be coaches who don't get anything, so I'm not don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about it.
Yeah.
But it's using that information.
I've got another question from Jose Cops. Jody, in your opinion, what do you think is better asset to a coach, a player with a great talent versus a player that takes instruction well? So a player with talent or one that takes instruction well?
We have both.
Should I say, what would the previous Jody have done before the mental shift and change in coaching style?
Probably instruction, I think. Probably. I'm trying to think of, but that's a challenge. So can you get the talented, and that's why I put that slide up, the talented player to buy into it. And I think that's the connection with the player is what makes them tick. So if we can find that one thing or two things that pushes the buttons. I mean, I've got to play in the EDP now. She can play. Whether she's going to be a senior international is debatable because she's more interested in playing for university club. She enjoys that and she wants to do this. I don't think she's got that inner motivation and drive to be a senior international. It's kind of those things you've done 16s, 18s, 21s, EDP. Oh, I'm going to be a senior. I don't know if she wants that. And she's one of those girls now kind of through COVID where because normally they're not at home during summer. They'll be always doing something. First time she's been at home all summer long. Kind of didn't have to do much. It'd be interesting to see how she comes out of going, I must this, and I really want to be in a senior international because it's there. It's right in front of her, or she goes the other way. I think the bigger challenge would be the ones who are talented, and we need to push the button and get them to understand we want to help you. The other ones are easier, but you also need those kind of players. You're going to have a squad of 18 players and all of them it's impossible. I challenge you even in the Dutch ladies team to find a squad of 18 players where they're all the superstars. I don't think it exists in teams.
Yeah. Jody, something interesting you mentioned that you never listened during halftime team talks.
Never
do you think any of your players listen to you at halftime now?
Obviously. I'd say I definitely didn't listen in team talks because of the structure we played. And I use that as a basis. Like I look at coaches before games and it's the boards out and it's information. Now, if they are kind of just highlighting stuff that they've done in weeks or the block of training, then that's fine. I just don't think you can chuck stuff at players before a game. I've never been able to understand that. So I work on the basis that everything we do in training, with a session this evening, actually, what we do on Saturday, what did we do well, how are we going to improve it? So I'm going to send out a video clip of some of the stuff we did on Saturday to prime them for this evening so we can get on with it. And on Saturday, I think COVID's actually helped me because we can't meet like an hour before, we can't be in a space indoors, you can't do all these things because I just don't see the point. And that's a personal thing. Like, you know, that me as a coach, I think me coming in there and kind of giving we can do this and all that.
Yeah.
I don't think it has much of an impact.
Yeah. So preparation is key in everything. I mean, before the match on the weekend, like you said, you give your players all the information. They then have to come and everything. And I think that's totally different to what we used to in South Africa, is where, you know, even as coaches, we don't share too easily. As coaches, we like to keep our cards close to our chest. And something that COVID has shown me is that everybody's willing to share. All the other international coaches are willing to share information, everything. South African mindset when it comes to coaches, I think we need to change our mindset in terms of sharing information and what we have. You know,
you'd be amazed at how it's not that we think people have this top secret stuff. Like you listen to these international coaches, you're kind of going, is that it? And I'm not to play down or anything. You just kind of expecting so much more. The first time I went to senior game. Bobby Crutch was coaching the seniors, and he lives in Bath. And I said, "Oh, can I come and watch?" He's like, "Yeah, come on." He said, "Do you want to come in at halftime? And do you want to come?" I was like, "Oh, can I? Do you?" He's like, "Yeah, come in." And he did his pre-match talk, and he did his halftime talk, and we were chatting about it afterwards. And he laughed. He said, "You were expecting more, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." More? Is that it? So we do that on the Saturday. He said, "Yes." People think it's the game's obviously slightly more complicated from a tactical point. It's slightly more, and it's quicker, and the speed of thought has to be quicker. But the fundamentals don't change, and that's the kind of thing. If you can instill the fundamentals, I didn't send out as much information before the boys, because boys were kind of like, "We'll pitch up. You don't need to tell us. It's fine."
Yeah.
Now, rightly or wrongly, I went along with that. With the girls, they want the information, they want to process the information, and then we can then go. Like I'm not going to send out anything. That's the first time we've started training in August. I'm not going to send out anything beforehand. And I'm only doing it to see what the direction would be.
Okay.
Just to see.
Yeah. You'll be happy to know that in the SA setup, we also have some mental coaches and people coming on board that our players can chat to and try and improve their mental strength and abilities. Something that wasn't around, I guess, when you guys were playing. Tough as nails, run through a wall. So I see that your focus is quite heavily on that as England and GB. And
I think it's important that they have a basis. And we spoke to the psych as well as saying, look, it shouldn't be a mental crutch. I'm having a bad day, or I go see the psych. That's not the case. It's more coping mechanism, like the triggers. I thought it was really interesting. Like I said, for me to put down on paper would have been really hard. I don't think I could do that. But for them to kind of just go through a process where we're structured. Okay, so why do you feel this way? What could we potentially do to help you? And again, Chase, the thing is, we don't want these girls to overthink things. And I say to the coaches, be really conscious here, because sometimes you just wake up in a bad mood. Like all of a sudden, we can't be scrambling for our papers and going, "Oh, Chase has come down. He doesn't look like he's having a good day. What should we do?" So Chase needs to eat his breakfast. He just wants his breakfast. Like, leave it alone. Like, let's not overkill it. But I think that support and Jenny chatting to the psych, he was really good at going, all it is support. It's not a crutch, because we don't want to create players every single time something goes wrong. They run into the psych. You've got to get on with it. So just like that hasn't changed. Sometimes you just have to get on with it.
Get on with it. No, brilliant. Thanks, Jodes. I think that's enough from my side. So if Rian is still there, Rian, can you come back on?
Thank you, Chase. Jody, just before we close off, I think it will be a miss of me not to ask, since you are at the University of Bath as a head hockey coach, I saw on your one IDP of one of your players, the balance between academics and hockey. What do you, as an institution, what support do you then provide the players when they're out of class, representing either England or Bath University? And then secondly, from a England and Great Britain perspective, when you're involved with the national teams, how much emphasis, especially from a coaching perspective, it's fine saying the administration must take care of the academics, but as a coach, I think it's so important that they understand that academics is just as crucial, because otherwise, if that's sort of on the mind of a player all the time, it could also affect performance.
It's the most important thing, and I think that's where the advantage I have working in the university. So this role I'm in is an interim one, and then I come back to the university. So because I work with students all the time, I understand it. So when I first came over, it takes a while to get used to kind of like what's going on, because everything's different. But fundamentally, your academics is the most important thing, and the sport is runs alongside it. So at Bath, we're massive on that academic side, and you play sport. It's not like some institutions will be like Loughborough, for instance, you kind of play sport and you study. And it's just a different way of looking at it. It's massive. We have to take into account everything that is going on with the academics and understand when the pinch points are. So when they're having exams, so our exams would be second week in Jan. They're 2 weeks in January, where we don't have sessions, or we have drop-in sessions. And then in May, they have major exams again. But yeah, as you go through the process, and each person's different, and we have courses that are different. So of course, we don't have exams in January, so you can't not have stuff on because you still have players. But the emphasis on them for us as a university and as I think most of the sports actually, not only hockey, is they have to leave here, good experience, better people, but the academic, that is the main thing. Whether they play sport and become international, brilliant. That's a bonus for us. And then we're talking about our top performers as well. We just have a different mindset. We don't want to win bucks. We can't compete with Loughborough, Nottingham. We just got. So we kind of, since last we started speaking about what is our USP. Why would you come here? And from a hockey perspective, it's the big deal is get you a really good academic background, get your degree, and play sport. So when you leave here, I mean, I think back to, like, if you look at our Facebook friends and all that, I'm still in contact with all my university friends. Do you know what I mean? And that is what you want when you leave here. You should have. I really enjoyed playing hockey at the University of Bath, and I'm now working in London in this bank, whatever kind of thing. Because we know not all of them are going to make it. We are well aware, but if we can do right by them, that's all we can do. And I suppose it's, if I were working in Durham or different universities, they spin slightly different and their focus points are slightly different, but we have a different product, which I think is good. I'd send my kid here. You know, like for me, not, and it's been biased and it's not been biased to a certain extent. I just see the feel. It's the person. What is right for that person, and we provide the support. From an EDP perspective, it's different, and I struggle with it sometimes because the main thing is get them into the seniors. So we do take account all the other things. Don't get me wrong, it does come into picture, but the emphasis of that program is to produce senior internationals. Kind of, I struggle with that sometimes because I think there are players in there who may need to make decisions. Kind of like, is she going to do? Should she be focusing on getting a job? You know, a really good example, we had one kid now who's been in the system for 2 years, offered a job in London, but they wouldn't allow her to do the EDP stuff. So she's asked, like you're saying, that on edge, what do I do? Because I want to be a senior international or something trainer, but I've got this job in London that with COVID, I'm probably not going to get in a year's time. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to be a senior international. And she was on edge. I said, do I take the job? Hockey will always be there. She's playing club hockey. And this is the nice thing with the system over here. You can always come back in. So if you opt out of something, there's no kind of closed door. You can come back in. We have a club nomination process. So like if you use a club, say we've got Drian Osman, he's a really good player, have a look at him. You then get assessed again. So my advice, rightly or wrongly to her was, but for me as a person was, she needs to take the job because there's no guarantee she'll be a senior international. And it's a holistic approach. I think my issue with the holistic approach is people talk it, but when it comes down to actually doing it and helping the person, I don't think we're that genuine. And for me, I mean, I could get into trouble for saying, take the job. But I think that we have to do right by the person. It's massive.
Good. No, I think, yeah, I don't see any other questions. So just on behalf of Nelson Mandela University, extend our sincere thanks for you to share your insights. As some of the members have mentioned, it was a good presentation. I'm positive they would have taken something positive away that they can implement into their plans. I'm just very pleased to see that, knowing you for quite some time, the passion is still there in whatever you do. From the days of, one of the only players with a number plate, UBE number 10, during your study days. You remain loyal to where you are now. So you had Bath for 14 years. And yeah, I just
a long time.
Yeah, from the university's perspective, we're really proud to see your growth and the impact that you're making and continue to make, whether it is in Great Britain or England or throughout the world. Continue what you're doing, and thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks. Okay, good grounding. You come from a good institution. You come from a good city. That's where it all starts, and that's what I try to do with my kids as well. Proper English little boys. So we've got some issues there, but like we give them a good grounding, and that's what the university did for me. I mean, I went through that whole process with UP, NMMU, and it put me in a good position to get to where I am. There's still more to come, but can't forget where I've come from.
Great, and yeah, thanks to my co-host, Chezen Guy, and then also to Tasquan for all the admin behind the scenes. And for everyone that connected today, thank you for your support, and we look forward to the next webinar. Thank you. And
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.